I never thought I'd end up living with my son at 63. After Tom died last winter, a heart attack while shoveling snow from our driveway in Rochester, everything changed overnight. Our modest savings went to medical bills and the funeral. The house we'd lived in for 30 years still had a mortgage I couldn't afford on my own. Within 3 months, I sold most of our furniture, packed what remained of my life into 4 boxes, and moved into Michael and Rebecca's suburban home in Buffalo. "Stay as long as you need, Mom," Michael had said, his arm around my shoulders as he showed me to their guest bedroom. It was a lovely room with pale blue walls and a window overlooking their backyard maple tree. Rebecca had even put fresh flowers on the nightstand. "We have plenty of space," she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The first week was awkward but cordial. I tried to stay out of their way, keeping to my room when they were home from their jobs at the hospital where they both worked. Michael as a radiologist and Rebecca as a nurse administrator. I'd cook dinner sometimes, using recipes Tom had loved, hoping to contribute something to the household. By the second week, I noticed the small changes. Rebecca would rewash dishes I'd already cleaned. She'd adjust the thermostat whenever I'd touched it. When I offered to help with laundry, she said, "I prefer to do it myself. You wouldn't know how I like things folded." After a month, the pretense of politeness began slipping away. One evening, I overheard Rebecca in the kitchen talking on the phone to her sister. "It was supposed to be temporary," she whispered harshly. "But she's settling in like she owns the place." I didn't sign up to run a retirement home. I stepped back quietly, my heart sinking. That night, I asked Michael if he knew of any affordable senior apartments nearby. His face fell. "Mom, you can't afford those places on just Social Security, and we have the space here. Why would you want to leave?" I couldn't tell him the truth. Michael had always protected me, even as a child, standing up to neighborhood bullies who teased me about my slight accent, a remnant of my British childhood before my parents immigrated to New York. Now, at 38, he was protecting me again, and I couldn't bear to burden him with more worries. So I stayed, and the silent war with Rebecca intensified. She never said anything directly hostile when Michael was around. Instead, it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. The guest towels would mysteriously disappear from my bathroom. The coffee I'd bought would be accidentally thrown out because it was probably stale. My morning walks in the neighborhood became my sanctuary, the only time I felt I could breathe freely. By summer, Rebecca had established a new household routine that effectively erased me. Family dinners became rare, as she and Michael often ate later because of work schedules. The TV volume would increase whenever I entered the living room. When their friends came over for weekend barbecues, I was introduced vaguely as Michael's mom who's staying with us for a bit, rather than by my name, Elizabeth. I found ways to make myself useful without intruding. I tended the flower beds in the front yard, something Rebecca had mentioned wanting to do but never having time for. I collected the mail and sorted it neatly on the kitchen counter. I baked bread on Sundays, filling the house with a homey scent that even Rebecca couldn't complain about. Michael noticed nothing amiss. He worked long hours, often taking overnight shifts. And when he was home, Rebecca was all smiles and affection. To him, we were one big happy family, making the best of a difficult situation. I couldn't shatter that illusion. After losing his father, seeing his mother and wife at odds might break something in him I couldn't repair. So I endured. I kept a journal hidden beneath my socks in the dresser drawer, writing down my feelings instead of speaking them aloud. I called my old friends from Rochester, careful to step outside to the backyard swing when I did, speaking in hushed tones about my new life. "It's fine," I'd tell them. "Michael and Rebecca have been so kind." The lies tasted bitter, but the truth was too heavy to share. It was a dreary Tuesday in September when everything changed. The Buffalo sky hung low with dark clouds, and rain tapped steadily against the windows. Michael had been on call for 36 hours straight and wasn't due home until evening. I'd spent the morning cleaning the already spotless guest bathroom and was in the kitchen making a batch of chicken noodle soup, comfort food for a gloomy day. Rebecca came home unexpectedly around noon, drenched from the downpour and clearly in a foul mood. She dropped her purse on the counter and stared at the pot simmering on the stove. "What's that smell?" she asked, her nose wrinkling. "Just some soup," I replied, stirring gently. I thought it would be nice for dinner since it's so cold today. She lifted the lid and peered inside. You're using my Le Creuset pot for that? I'm sorry. I didn't realize. That was a wedding gift from my mother. It's not for making... She waved her hand dismissively. Whatever this is. I felt my face flush. I can transfer it to another pot. Don't bother. She grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water. I had to leave work early because Mrs. Abernathy canceled her appointment. Now I'm losing hours this week. I nodded sympathetically, relieved for the change of subject. That's too bad. Maybe they can... And then I come home to find the house smelling like a cheap diner. She set her glass down with a thud. You know, Elizabeth, when Michael suggested you stay with us, I thought it would be for a few weeks, maybe a month. The way she said my name, like it was something distasteful, made my stomach tighten. I've been looking at apartments, I said quietly. It wasn't entirely true. I had looked, but everything was far beyond my means. Have you? Because it seems to me like you're getting pretty comfortable here. Using my things, rearranging my kitchen, acting like this is your house. Rebecca, I'm trying not to be a burden. Trying? She laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the kitchen tiles. Do you have any idea what it's like having your mother-in-law constantly underfoot? Do you know how many of my friends have asked how long you're staying? It's embarrassing. I stepped back from the stove, my hands trembling slightly. In 6 months, this was the most direct Rebecca had ever been. The pretense was finally dropping away. I understand this isn't ideal, I began. Ideal? She moved closer, her voice rising. Michael and I worked for years to afford this house. We delayed having children to focus on our careers. We had plans, Elizabeth. Plans that didn't include becoming caretakers for his mother. The word caretakers stung like a slap. I'm not asking anyone to take care of me. I'm perfectly capable. Are you? Then why are you here? Why aren't you in your own home, living your own life? Why are you inserting yourself into ours? Each question hit like a hammer. I gripped the counter to steady myself. My husband died, I said softly. I lost everything. And that's sad, truly. But it's not our responsibility to pick up the pieces. She crossed her arms. You should have planned better. You should have had insurance, savings, something, anything. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. We did. Tom's medical bills took everything. Rebecca shook her head, unmoved. That's not my problem, or Michael's. Something inside me snapped. 6 months of swallowed words and forced smiles rushed to the surface. He's my son, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. And this is temporary. I'm not trying to intrude on your life. But you are, she countered, stepping closer. Every day you're here is another day Michael feels obligated to you instead of focusing on us, on our future. That's not fair. I barely see Michael. He works constantly. Because he's trying to support not just his wife, but his mother, too. She was shouting now, her face flushed with anger. Do you know he took on extra shifts to help with expenses since you moved in? Did you know that? I didn't. The realization hit me hard. He never said anything. Of course not. He's too nice. Too concerned about your feelings. She turned away and then spun back suddenly. But I'm not Michael. I don't have to pretend everything's fine when it's not. She moved to the stove, and before I could react, she grabbed the pot of soup and carried it to the sink. With deliberate slowness, she poured my hours of work down the drain, noodles and vegetables disappearing into the garbage disposal. Rebecca, stop! I reached for the pot, but she held it away. This is my kitchen, she hissed. My house, my husband. She set the empty pot down with a clang. And you need to understand your place here. You're a guest, a temporary, unwelcome guest. I stood frozen, watching as she turned on the disposal, grinding away the last of my soup. The noise seemed to fill the entire kitchen, drowning out even the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. When she finished, she thrust the dirty pot toward me. Clean this. Since you're not contributing financially, the least you can do is keep my things in good condition. The front door opened at that exact moment. Michael stepped into the kitchen, soaked from the rain, his hospital scrubs visible beneath his open jacket. He stopped abruptly, taking in the scene. his wife standing over me, empty pot extended, my tear-streaked face. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. The kitchen fell silent except for the steady drip of water from Michael's rain-soaked jacket onto the tile floor. Rebecca slowly lowered the pot, her expression shifting from rage to something closer to concern. Not concern for me, I realized, but for herself, for what Michael might have heard. "Michael," she said, her voice suddenly honeyed, "you're home early. We were just having a little disagreement about kitchen space." She placed the pot in the sink and turned to him with a smile that didn't match the atmosphere in the room. My son's eyes moved from Rebecca to me, then to the running garbage disposal, which he reached over and switched off. The abrupt silence felt deafening. "Mom?" he asked quietly. "What happened?" I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. For months I'd protected him from this truth, swallowed my pride, and endured Rebecca's increasing hostility. Now, confronted with the chance to finally tell him everything, I hesitated. Would revealing the truth hurt him more than the lies had protected him? Rebecca didn't give me the chance to decide. "Your mother made soup in my good pot," she explained, as if that justified everything. I was just explaining that certain things in this house are off-limits. Michael's expression hardened as he shrugged off his wet jacket and hung it over a kitchen chair. "I could hear you from the driveway," he said flatly. The windows were open. Rebecca's confidence faltered visibly. "Then you know she needs to respect our boundaries." "Boundaries?" Michael interrupted, his voice unnervingly calm. "Is that what you call what I just heard?" He turned to me. "Mom, I need you to tell me the truth. Has this been going on since you moved in?" The concern in his eyes broke something loose inside me. 6 months of careful silence crumbled away. "Not like this," I admitted softly. "Usually it's subtler." "Subtler," he repeated, the word hanging in the air between us. Rebecca stepped forward, touching his arm. "Michael, your mother has been having a difficult time adjusting to living with us. I've been trying my best to accommodate her, but—" "Stop." Michael gently removed her hand. "Just stop talking, Rebecca." He walked to the refrigerator and opened it, surveying the contents. "Where's the chicken stock Mom bought yesterday? And the vegetables?" Rebecca crossed her arms defensively. "What does that have to do with anything? They were for her soup, weren't they? The soup you just poured down the drain." He closed the refrigerator door and turned to face his wife. "I want to know how long you've been treating my mother like this." "Like what?" "I've opened my home to her. I've put my life on hold while she figures out her situation." Rebecca's voice rose again, indignation replacing her momentary contrition. "Do you have any idea how hard this has been for me? Having her here, watching everything I do, using our things, taking up space." "She's my mother," Michael said quietly. "And I'm your wife." Rebecca slammed her palm on the counter. "Your wife, Michael, the person you promised to build a life with. But ever since she moved in, it's like I've become secondary in my own home." I couldn't stand it anymore. "I should go," I said, moving toward the doorway. "I'll pack my things." "No." Michael's voice was firm. "You're not going anywhere, Mom." He turned back to Rebecca. "I heard what you said to her, about me taking extra shifts to support her." Rebecca's face paled slightly. "Well, it's true, isn't it? We've had additional expenses since she moved in." Michael laughed, a short, humorless sound. "The extra shifts were for the lake house, Rebecca. The one you've been pressuring me to buy for the last year. The one I've been saving for as a surprise for our anniversary." The revelation hung in the air like a physical thing. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed without sound. "Mom hasn't been a financial burden," Michael continued. "She buys her own groceries with her Social Security. She cleans the house when we're at work. She's even been paying us rent, though I've been putting it aside to help her get her own place eventually." I hadn't known he was saving the money. The thought made my throat tight with emotion. "You don't understand," Rebecca tried again, her voice smaller now. "It's not about the money. It's about our privacy, our marriage." "Our marriage," Michael echoed. "The one where you've been secretly tormenting my widowed mother while pretending everything was fine to my face." He shook his head slowly. "I don't even recognize you right now." "You're overreacting," she insisted. It was just a disagreement about soup. No, Michael said firmly. It wasn't about soup. It was about power, about cruelty. He moved to stand beside me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Mom, I am so sorry. I had no idea this was happening. I didn't want to cause problems between you two, I explained, the words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. You've both been under so much stress with work, and after losing your father, I just thought, you thought you had to endure being treated like this to keep the peace. Michael finished my sentence, his expression a mixture of anger and guilt. I should have seen it. I should have paid more attention. Rebecca made a sound of frustration. This is exactly what I was afraid of. She's turning you against me, making me look like the villain. You did that all by yourself, Michael replied evenly. He took a deep breath and faced his wife directly. I think you should go stay with your sister for a few days. We both need some space to think about what happens next. Rebecca's face transformed with shock. You're choosing her over me? You're kicking me out of my own house? I'm asking for space, Michael clarified. And yes, if it comes down to a choice between someone who treats others with basic human dignity and someone who doesn't, that's an easy choice. The weight of his words seemed to physically impact Rebecca. She staggered slightly, gripping the counter. You can't be serious. Pack what you need for a few days, Michael said quietly. We'll talk when we've both had time to cool down. Rebecca looked from Michael to me and back again, as if waiting for one of us to say it was all a misunderstanding. When neither of us spoke, she straightened her shoulders and stalked out of the kitchen without another word. Moments later, we heard the bedroom door slam upstairs. Michael turned to me, his face etched with regret. Mom, why didn't you tell me? I reached up to touch his cheek, the same gesture I'd used to comfort him since he was a little boy with scraped knees. Because you love her, and because after your father died, I couldn't bear to bring more pain into your life. He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to truly cry. Rebecca didn't go quietly. The evening after Michael asked her to leave, she packed 3 suitcases and called her sister to pick her up. As she waited in the driveway, she alternated between tearful pleas to Michael and cold glares in my direction. When her sister Jenna arrived, the performance reached new heights. He's choosing his mother over his marriage, Rebecca sobbed dramatically as Jenna helped load her bags. After everything I've done for this family. Jenna shot me a look of pure venom before ushering her sister into the car. Before they drove away, she rolled down her window. This isn't over, she called out, pointing at me. You can't just waltz in and destroy someone's marriage. Michael stood beside me, his arm protectively around my shoulders. It's not Mom who destroyed anything, he replied evenly. We watched in silence as they drove away, red taillights disappearing around the corner. That first night without Rebecca was strangely peaceful. Michael ordered pizza, and we ate it in the living room while watching an old movie, something we hadn't done since he was in college. Neither of us mentioned Rebecca or the confrontation. It was as if we both needed one evening of normalcy before facing what came next. The following morning, reality intruded harshly. Rebecca began texting Michael incessantly, apologies mixed with accusations, declarations of love followed by thinly veiled threats. By noon, she had changed her Facebook status to "going through a difficult time," and her friends were flooding the comments with supportive messages, many containing veiled references to toxic family members and manipulative in-laws. I should respond, Michael said, staring at his phone with a troubled expression. Set the record straight. No, I advised, touching his arm. That's exactly what she wants, to drag you into a public argument where everyone takes sides. Nothing good will come of it. He nodded reluctantly and silenced his phone. I need to check our accounts, he said suddenly. Make sure everything's secure. We sat together at the kitchen table as he logged into their online banking. His expression darkened as he scrolled through recent transactions. She withdrew $5,000 yesterday, he said quietly. Right after she left. Maybe she needed money to stay at a hotel, I suggested, though we both knew her sister had taken her in. Michael continued investigating, moving from account to account. The credit card balance is much higher than it should be, he noted, clicking through statements. There are charges here I don't recognize. A weekend spa retreat last month, jewelry, designer clothes. He looked up at me, his expression a mixture of hurt and anger. "These go back months. Some even before you moved in." I felt a twinge of guilt. If I'd spoken up sooner about Rebecca's behavior, would Michael have discovered this earlier? "There's more," he said grimly, opening another window. "Our equity line of credit has been maxed out. $15,000. I never authorized this." Over the next few days, the financial deception unraveled further. Michael discovered Rebecca had been systematically hiding spending and debt throughout their marriage. She had opened store credit cards in both their names. She had borrowed from their retirement accounts. Most disturbingly, she had taken out a personal loan using their home as collateral. A loan Michael knew nothing about. "How could I have been so blind?" he asked one evening, surrounded by bank statements and credit reports spread across the dining room table. "I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to be observant. I'm supposed to notice details. Love makes us see what we want to see," I told him gently. "And you're not just a doctor. You're a human being." A week after Rebecca left, Michael contacted a lawyer. The decision to divorce wasn't made in anger or haste. It came after discovering the extent of Rebecca's financial infidelity and the realization that their entire relationship had been built on deception. "It wasn't just about how she treated you," Michael explained as we drove home from the lawyer's office. "Though that would have been enough. It's that I don't even know who she is anymore. Maybe I never did." Rebecca's response to the divorce filing was swift and vicious. She hired an aggressive attorney known for high-conflict divorces and demanded alimony that would cripple Michael financially. She claimed he had abandoned her, that his work schedule had caused her emotional distress, that she had sacrificed her career advancement to support his. Each new accusation seemed more outlandish than the last. Then came the most shocking claim, that I had emotionally abused her, turning her husband against her through manipulation and lies. Her lawyer filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I posed a threat to Rebecca's well-being. "This is insane," Michael fumed after being served with the papers. "You've never raised your voice to anyone in your life, let alone threatened Rebecca." I sat quietly at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. "She's desperate," I said finally. "She's trying to control the narrative." "Well, it won't work," Michael insisted. "We have text messages, emails. We have neighbors who've witnessed how she treated you. We have evidence of her financial misconduct." I nodded, but a chill ran through me nonetheless. I'd spent my life avoiding conflict, always believing that kindness would prevail. Now I was being painted as an abuser, a homewrecker, a villain in someone else's story. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the window seat in my room, watching the autumn leaves swirl in the streetlight glow. I didn't wish harm on Rebecca, even now. But I knew that sometimes justice required standing your ground, speaking truth even when your voice shakes. Tomorrow, we would begin gathering evidence, building our defense. The woman who had tried to make me invisible would now have to face what she had done, in the cold light of a courtroom, where performances and manipulations would fall flat against hard facts. The first frost of October coated Buffalo in a silvery sheen as Michael and I prepared for the preliminary hearing. For weeks, we had methodically gathered evidence, bank statements, credit card bills, emails, text messages. Our kitchen table had become command central, covered with folders labeled in Michael's precise doctor's handwriting. Financial records, communications, property documentation. Our lawyer, Sandra Kaplan, was a petite woman with steel-gray hair and a reputation for meticulous preparation. She arrived one evening to review our evidence, her experienced eyes scanning each document with clinical detachment. "This is good," she said, nodding at the financial records. "Clear pattern of deception. The judge will see that." She glanced up at Michael. "But the restraining order against your mother is trickier. It's her word against yours, and family courts tend to err on the side of caution." "But it's completely fabricated," Michael protested. "I know that," Sandra replied calmly. "But we need something definitive to prove it." She turned to me. "Elizabeth, can you think of anything else? Any incident where Rebecca's treatment of you might have been witnessed by others or documented somehow?" I shook my head slowly. "She was always careful. The worst incidents happened when we were alone. Sandra nodded sympathetically and continued sorting through papers. I watched her methodical movements, feeling oddly detached from the process. This was my life being reduced to exhibits and affidavits, the remains of a relationship gone terribly wrong. Later that night, unable to sleep, I decided to sort through my own financial records. Though my finances were simple compared to Michael and Rebecca's, I wanted to ensure everything was in order before court. I spread my Social Security statements, pension information, and the few remaining bank statements from my joint accounts with Tom across my bed. That's when I noticed it. A credit card statement addressed to me from a bank I'd never used. At first, I assumed it was junk mail, one of those pre-approved offers that flood mailboxes. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was an active account in my name with a balance of nearly $3,000. I had never applied for this card. I had never received it. I had never made the purchases listed. Expensive restaurants in Niagara Falls, boutique clothing stores, a weekend at a luxury hotel in Toronto. With trembling hands, I checked the mailing address on the statement. It wasn't our Buffalo address, but a P.O. box I didn't recognize. The card had been opened 6 months ago, shortly after I moved in with Michael and Rebecca. I called Michael immediately, despite the late hour. He appeared in my doorway moments later, hair tousled from sleep. When I showed him the statement, his face darkened. "Identity theft," he said grimly, "and I think we both know who did it." The next morning, we contacted Sandra and the credit card company. A fraud investigation was opened immediately. When the security department pulled the application details, we discovered the devastating confirmation. The card had been applied for online using my Social Security number and date of birth, but Rebecca's email address. The P.O. box belonged to her as well. "This changes everything," Sandra said when we brought her the evidence. "Identity theft is a criminal offense. This isn't just about the divorce anymore." 2 days later, we filed charges with the Buffalo Police Department. The detective assigned to our case was a no-nonsense woman named Detective Ramirez, who specialized in financial crimes. "Unfortunately, we see this kind of thing more often than you'd think," she told us as she took my statement. "Family members are the most common perpetrators of identity theft because they have access to personal information." Rebecca was formally charged the following week. Her attorney immediately reached out to Sandra, suddenly eager to discuss settlement terms for the divorce. The restraining order against me was withdrawn. The excessive alimony demands were reduced to a more reasonable figure. "She's scared," Sandra explained. "As she should be. Identity theft carries potential jail time." The court date for the criminal charges was set for early November. As the day approached, my anxiety grew. I had never imagined myself in a courtroom, testifying against my own daughter-in-law. The thought made me physically ill, but I knew I had to see it through. The Erie County Courthouse was an imposing stone building in downtown Buffalo. Michael and I arrived early, dressed conservatively. Me in a simple navy dress I'd owned for years, him in a charcoal suit. We sat silently in the hallway, waiting to be called in. Rebecca arrived with her attorney and sister in tow. She looked smaller somehow, her usual confident posture diminished. When she saw us, she quickly looked away, whispering urgently to her lawyer. Inside the courtroom, the proceedings moved with formal precision. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. The fraudulent application, the statements, the P.O. box records. I testified briefly, confirming that I had never applied for or used the credit card. When Rebecca took the stand, she tried one last desperate strategy. "I was just trying to help," she claimed, her voice breaking. "Elizabeth needed to establish credit after her husband died. I was going to tell her about the card eventually. It was meant to be a surprise." The judge, a woman in her 60s with piercing eyes and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, was clearly unmoved. "Mrs. Lawson," she addressed Rebecca directly, "are you asking this court to believe that you opened a credit account in your mother-in-law's name without her knowledge or consent, had the statement sent to a P.O. box she knew nothing about, and charged thousands of dollars to this account, all as an altruistic gesture?" Rebecca's facade crumbled. "I made a mistake," she whispered. The verdict came swiftly, guilty of identity theft and fraud. The sentence was suspended jail time, 3 years of probation, mandatory financial counseling, and full restitution of all fraudulent charges plus fees. As we left the courtroom, Rebecca tried to approach Michael. "Please," she began, reaching for his arm. "You have to understand." Michael stepped back. "I understand perfectly now," he said quietly. "And I want you to know that I never would have pursued criminal charges if you had simply been honest from the beginning. This is the consequence of your choices, not mine." I said nothing. I didn't need to. I simply stood straight, met Rebecca's gaze without flinching, and walked out of the courtroom with my son. There was no joy in her downfall, no satisfaction in her humiliation. There was only the quiet vindication of truth, finally seeing the light of day. Winter settled over Buffalo with its familiar intensity. Snow piled in drifts along the driveway, and the maple tree in the backyard stood bare against the gray sky. Inside, the house felt different, lighter somehow, despite the season's darkness. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks before Christmas, the proceedings mercifully straightforward after Rebecca's criminal conviction. She moved to Cleveland for a fresh start, and gradually her name stopped coming up in our daily conversations. Michael and I developed new routines. He adjusted his hospital schedule to work fewer overnight shifts. I learned to use the espresso machine that had intimidated me before, making us both lattes on Sunday mornings. We took turns cooking dinner, laughing over my traditional recipes and his experimental ones. The guest room slowly transformed into truly my space, with framed photos of Tom and our life together displayed openly instead of tucked away in drawers. "I was thinking," Michael said one evening as we sat by the fireplace, "you don't have to rush to find your own place. This arrangement works for us." I smiled at his kindness. "I appreciate that, but we both know I need my own space eventually, and so do you." I patted his hand. "You're 40 next year. You might meet someone new." He grimaced. "I think I'm off relationships for a while. The right person will come along when you least expect it," I told him, echoing what my mother had once told me. "And when they do, you don't need your mom as a roommate." During those winter months, I began volunteering at the Elderwood Community Center near Delaware Park. What started as serving coffee at their weekly gatherings evolved into co-facilitating a support group for seniors dealing with major life transitions. Many were widows and widowers like me. Some had lost their homes to financial hardship. Others were estranged from family members. "You have a gift for this," said Diane, the social worker who ran the program. "People trust you with their stories." I found myself sharing parts of my own experience, not the raw details of Rebecca's cruelty, but the broader strokes of loss, dependence, and ultimately, reclaiming my dignity. Something healing happened in that circular exchange of vulnerability. Each time I helped someone else see a path forward, my own way became clearer. By spring, I had enrolled in a certification program to become a peer counselor for seniors. The community college courses were challenging after decades away from formal education. But Michael helped me study, quizzing me on terminology and concepts while we walked around the neighborhood as the snow melted. "You know what's funny?" he said during one of our walks. "All those months, Rebecca was worried about you being a burden, and now you're building a whole new career helping others." I hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. The woman who had once felt invisible was now seen and valued by an entire community. In April, on the 1-year anniversary of Tom's death, Michael took a rare day off work. We drove to Rochester together to visit the cemetery, laying fresh flowers beside the simple headstone. "Dad would be proud of you," Michael said as we stood there. "He always said you were the strongest person he knew." I smiled through tears. "I didn't feel very strong this past year." "But you were," he insisted. "Even when you were protecting me from the truth about Rebecca, you were showing strength, just not in the way I recognized at the time." On the drive back to Buffalo, Michael took an unexpected exit. "I want to show you something," he said mysteriously. We drove through an unfamiliar neighborhood of small, well-kept homes with budding gardens and bicycles on front porches. He pulled up in front of a compact bungalow with a bright blue door. "What do you think?" he asked, nodding toward the house. I studied it. The covered front porch with space for a swing, the large windows, the mature oak tree in the yard. "It's lovely. Are you thinking of moving?" He laughed. No, Mom. I'm thinking maybe you are. He handed me a folder from the back seat. Inside was a property listing with the bungalow's details. It's for sale. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, walking distance to the community center where you volunteer. There's even a garden in the back. I stared at him, speechless. Remember that rent money I was saving for you? Plus what we got from selling your and Dad's house furniture. It's enough for a down payment, he continued. The monthly mortgage would be less than what you were paying before Dad died. Michael, I finally managed, I can't let you do this. You're not letting me do anything. This is your money. His expression grew serious. After everything that happened, I just helped find the right place. And I had a selfish motive too. It's only 10 minutes from my house, so I can still come over for dinner regularly. We got out of the car and walked around the property. The real estate agent had given Michael a key, so we toured the interior as well. It was small but perfect, recently renovated with an updated kitchen, hardwood floors, and built-in bookshelves in the living room. I could immediately envision where my remaining furniture would go, how I would arrange my knitting basket beside the sunny window, which bedroom would become my home office for studying. 2 months later, I moved in. Michael and several of his colleagues from the hospital helped, carrying boxes and assembling furniture. My friends from the community center organized a housewarming party, filling my new home with laughter and warmth. That evening, after everyone had left, I sat alone on my front porch swing. The summer air was thick with the scent of nearby gardens, and fireflies blinked in the gathering dusk. From inside came the ticking of Tom's old mantel clock, one of the few items I'd kept from our married life together. I thought about the journey of the past 18 months, from the devastation of losing Tom, through the quiet humiliation of Rebecca's hostility, to this moment of perfect peace. The path had not been what I expected. The wounds had cut deeper than I could have imagined. But sitting there, on my own porch, in my own home, I felt Tom's presence as clearly as if he were beside me. "We did it, old friend," I whispered to the evening air. "We found our way through." Tomorrow I would plant herbs in the kitchen window boxes. Next weekend, Michael would come for Sunday brunch. In 2 weeks, I would complete my certification and begin counseling work. Life was unfolding again, not as a continuation of what had been lost, but as something new, something I had helped create from the broken pieces. I rocked gently on the swing, watching the fireflies rise higher as darkness fell. From somewhere down the street came the sound of children laughing, a dog barking, the everyday symphony of a neighborhood settling into evening. I had become part of it now, no longer a guest in someone else's life, but the author of my own.